The morning Colonel Voss told her to leave, I was 3 feet away, and I didn't say a word. She'd come onto the command floor with a request. She wanted a radio link to the aid post before the breach kicked off. Said she needed real-time casualty flow so she could stage the right blood. Voss didn't look up from his map. He said, "This is a command floor, not a triage tent." And when she didn't move, he finally turned and looked at her. White cross on her collar, a kit bag over one shoulder, and he said, "Get the nurse off my floor, not the medic." Not her name, which was Captain Dana Reyes, which was stitched right there on her chest. He said the nurse. And then he went back to his map. She looked at him for a moment. No color in her face, no tremble in her jaw. She picked up her kit bag, turned and walked out. I watched her go and I thought, right. Support staff. The breach is in 4 hours. That is the thing I have spent 6 years trying to live down. Fob Ardent sits above the Kessler Valley on a shelf of rock and red clay, and the ridge above it, the one we called the spine, was supposed to take 40 minutes to clear. 3rd Platoon would push through the western draw. 2nd would hold the eastern approach, and by 0900 we'd have the high ground and the valley road with it. Clean, planned, map perfect. What happened instead was that a secondary position nobody had flagged opened up on the western draw at 0714, pinned 3rd Platoon against a rock shelf with no cover and no retreat, and turned the breach into a casualty funnel. The radio started screaming at 0718. By 0730 we had 6 men down and no medevac window. The bird couldn't get below the ridge crest without eating a rocket. I was with 2nd Platoon on the eastern approach when the order came to push up and relieve 3rd. We moved. A mortar round found us at 0741. I remember the sound, a flat crack. Then the ground came up and hit me in the face, and then I was on my back in the red clay looking at a white sky, and my left leg was wrong in a way I couldn't think about directly. 2 of our guys dragged me to the aid post at the base of the spine. I was the 9th man in. The aid post was a canvas lean-to staked against a rock wall 20 feet wide, lit by 2 battery lanterns and whatever came through the open front. She had it running like a machine. I want to be careful here, because like a machine is the lazy way to say it, and it doesn't get at the truth. What I mean is this. She had a system, and the system was hers, and she had built it before the first casualty arrived. Triage tags already color-coded on a rock to her left, blood staged by type, airways kit on her right where her hand could find it without looking. She was working on a chest wound when they brought me in, her hands inside. Another man's body, her eyes tracking the entrance at the same time, and she called out my tag color before I'd been set down. Red. Immediate. But not the most immediate. She finished the chest. She came to me. I told her I was fine. She cut my trouser leg and looked at what the mortar had done, and she said quietly, "You're going to be fine. You're not fine yet." Then she worked. I don't know how long it took. I know that by the time she tied off, there were 11 of us in that lean-to, and the sounds from the ridge above had changed. Fewer rifles, longer gaps, too long. Corporal Mays, the last man who'd come down mobile, told her the line had 1 defender left, maybe 2, and they were on the wrong side of a gap in the rock wall that led straight down to us. She listened. She looked at her 11 men. She went to the kit bag she'd brought off the command floor, the one she'd been carrying when Voss told his staff to get the nurse out, and she pulled a rifle from the bottom of it, a short one, suppressed, with a worn stock. She chambered around the way you chamber around when you've done it 10,000 times. Which is to say, without looking. Mace said, "Ma'am," she said, "stay with them." She pointed at us without turning around. Nobody moves. Nobody bleeds more than they're already bleeding. Then she went up the spine. I could hear her from where I lay. Not her. You don't hear a person moving when they move like that, but I could hear. What stopped? The gap in the fire, the change in rhythm. 3 shots, then quiet. 2 shots, then quiet. Then a long silence that felt like the ridge holding its breath. At 0913 the radio on Mace's vest cracked and a voice said, "Spine secure." Mace looked at me. I looked at the 11 men around me, all of them breathing, all of them with IVs draining into their arms and airways cleared and wounds packed. I closed my eyes. Colonel Voss arrived at the aid post at 0931. He came down the spine with 4 men and he ducked through the lean-to entrance and he stopped. He stood there in the lantern light and he counted. 11 men, alive, breathing. He knew what he'd sent up that ridge. He knew what the radio had reported at 0730. He was doing math and the math wasn't possible. She came in behind him, still carrying the rifle. A long cut across her forearm she hadn't had time to deal with. crusted dark at the edges. She set the rifle against the rock wall and went back to checking drips. Voss turned and looked at her. She didn't look up. He said her name, not the nurse, not Captain, but her name Reyes. And she glanced up briefly, the way you glance at a noise that doesn't require a full response. He said, "How many?" 11 stable, she said. "Petty needs a hospital in the next 3 hours, or you'll lose the leg. Cutler and Marsh can travel in 6. She went back to the drip. Voss stood there for another moment. Then, very slowly, he went down onto one knee in the red clay mud of the aid post floor. He was still in full kit. He had his rank on his collar and his unit patch on his shoulder, and he went down onto one knee in the mud in front of her. And he stayed there. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, she said, "I need that radio link now, sir," and handed him the receiver, and went to check on Petty's leg. They airlifted us out in 2 waves. I went in the first. I don't remember much of it. The painkillers she'd pushed had finally caught up to me. But I remember looking back through the bird's open door as we lifted off the fob. Voss was standing at the edge of the landing pad. He was watching the helicopter go. He had his hand raised, not quite a salute, not quite a wave, just a hand raised, held there, like a man trying to give something back that he'd already spent. I still have the triage tag she put on me. Red, immediate. Written in her hand, which was steady as a level on glass when she wrote it, and steady as a level on glass when she worked. I keep it in my wallet. I've shown it to no one. Some debts you just carry.